Welcome to the Ep5 podcast, the home for cultural chit-chat in and outside Madrid. People will talk. Welcome to part one of the Ep5 podcast, Mary. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. So welcome back to the latest episode. We hope you enjoyed our last one, which is about space, observatory, and very deep, dense things. But what's more important for me, though, Mary, is that your sister was not too happy with my repeated references in two podcasts ago. So I do take this opportunity to apologise, and it will never happen again, I promise.
I think this is the second time you apologise, actually.
It's a big apology. But don't worry, this is the last reference. You'll be free from now on. And then to say big hello to my mammy, who is an avid listener of the show as well,
yes,
and was wondering where her mention was. So here it is, obviously. So would you like to take this opportunity to talk to anybody or say hello to anybody?
No, I think we'll just keep you focused on your mom.
Okay, so this one is dedicated to you, ma'am. Hope you're having a lovely day back home in Ireland. So anyway, today we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But also this Sunday we're going to Barajas Airport. So by the time you actually hear this, we will have already been there. So it's time travel all over the place here to interview 4 Irish women, Spanish women, and 4 Irish men who are parts of Spanish men, who do Irish dancing.
Everyone's Spanish.
Yes, they're all Spanish. So the women are dancing and the men are playing the instruments, and we're going to be going to their 80-minute performance near the airports and kind of getting a feel and a vibe for it. So we've mentioned this in previous episodes, but this week we're actually doing it, so it's literally days away now. Are you looking forward to it?
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, very much so. Should be really nice.
What are you expecting?
Lots of laughter as usual.
Lots of laughter?
Yes.
Because when we go into the field filming, it's always a riot.
Well, also because we're being very mischievous and we're going to ask them some questions.
That is very true. We're going to ask them some quiz questions based on Ireland. So they're going to be simple questions, not going to be ones to catch them out.
Not at all.
Well, okay, they're completely designed to catch them out.
Exactly.
But not in a mean-spirited way. So we'll demonstrate some of the questions that we're going to be asking them in that video. So, for example, Mary, Westlife or Boyzone?
Hey, you've changed that one. I cannot choose between those two.
Okay, Roy Keane or Mick McCarthy?
Roy Keane.
Father Ted or Ferris City?
Father Ted.
Barry's Tea or Lyons Tea?
Paris.
You have to say the answers louder.
Paris.
Barry's Tea. Cork or Dublin?
Cork.
Rosa Truly or the Donegal version?
Rosa Tree.
You changed your answer, but well done.
Because I know it's the right answer.
What's the name of the Taoiseach? The Prime Minister of Ireland?
Oh, Leo.
Is it... Leo Varadkar, close enough.
There you go.
Fair enough. Kerry Maid or Dairy Gold? It's butter, by the way.
Give me a clue.
I actually don't mind either. Potatoes, mashed or fried?
I'm saying mashed because I figure that's more Irish, but I prefer them fried.
Okay. Blind Boy or Dustin the Turkey?
I'll have to say Blind Boy because I don't know who the second person is.
And the last question is Bono or Bob Geldof?
God, neither.
Is the correct answer. Ding, ding, ding. That was a trick question, but you successfully navigated that one. Yeah. Wow. I know we've done this like 3 or 4 times now, this quiz, so you're a pro, but try to throw in some random...
Well, the questions change, so...
They do. Mostly because I can't remember the exact questions I've asked you,
I know.
But I think we've hit the main Irish cultural points.
Of course.
Did I ask you about Father Ted?
Of course you did, but that one was a given.
That was a given. That was a soft one for you. I should have opened with that one because it's a little bit easier for you. And, okay, well done. Is there anything you want to ask me about Spain?
Am I gonna get a certificate of Irishness or something?
You got me, Irish token friend. So
Wow. I had you before I answered those questions.
that's true. But no, okay, I can work something up possibly. Is there any Spanish one that you could ask me in return? Just one.
Okay, just to annoy you, are there more words in the Spanish or in the English language?
The correct answer to that is I don't care. But I would say more in the Spanish one, no?
Ah, really?
Yeah.
That's only because you don't want to upset the listeners.
No, it's because whenever you have a Spanish student, they're always like, oh, English is so boring. Yeah, there are more ways to express it. Spanish is the perfect language. And the thing is, I can't say yes or no to that, and neither can they, because neither of us speak both languages like 100%.
Okay.
Well, you do. Well, no, I mean you do.
Well, yeah.
But I'm talking about the other
I
Spanish
know
people.
you and your students.
Yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
know.
You actually do speak both
Okay,
languages pretty
but
well.
okay, so I'll pretty well. Thank you
I
very
mean,
much.
perfectly.
Well, no, not perfectly either. But okay. So I say there's more ways of expressing things in Spanish language.
Okay.
So like I mean, there are very few things that I actually, that I actually praise about my country.
That's true.
But I think language is, a decent one.
And by the way, as a caveat, like obviously I speak English 100%, and Spanish.
Do you now?
I speak Spanish like 80% or something. I mean, it's pretty up there, but obviously there's gaps.
I B2.
No.
Oh, yes, you want to.
I was C1. I can't believe you still think I'm a B2.
I just said to one you.
Yeah, it certainly worked well.
I know.
We'll have this argument off air, so we'll have the musical interlude now. We'll have our little tit for tat, and then after we calm down, we'll press the play button and record part 2. Adios. So, welcome back to part 2. So, look, you already know, listener, what we're going to talk about. It's in the podcast description and the podcast title.
Well, the title, I don't know, because our titles
Are
sometimes
wacky.
are a bit surreal.
But we'll start off this part. Excuse me. Oh, all that water going down the wrong way. Anyway, I'm going to ask you your experience of being a migrant.
Uh-huh.
A lot of different types of migrants, as I'm sure we are all aware. When you look back on your migrant experience, how would you classify it? No, this is a serious question.
I don't know. It's very complex, isn't it? I would say, well, enriching, tough going, life changing.
Enriching in what way?
Well, I mean, because you have to challenge yourself to live and work in a different culture. So it's tricky. I don't know. So but it's enriching because obviously, you are experiencing a completely different way of looking at the world and organizing things and just everything about it. So I think that's always a positive thing. I mean, obviously you can't compare when you have if you're a migrant but basically you have the means or just you are working while you're there or whatever. It's not the same as when you are forced to leave your country.
Well, see, that's kind of the framework around what I want to discuss, because I feel there are some similarities between Ireland and Spain. I think a lot of Spanish people have had to leave the country during the crisis. Now, also historically, a lot of people have had to leave the state because the Irish government couldn't look after them because of various economic recessions. Other factors, but that being the primary reason. And even though if I said that to somebody now who had to immigrate in the 80s, that my generation are economic migrants forced to leave the country, they probably would laugh at me because they think, you have technology, you have smartphones, you're going to work as bankers or English teachers or whatever. It's a little bit different experience.
Bankers or English teachers.
It's comparable in status and importance. And anyway,
And salary.
and salary
Sure.
benefits. But the fact of the matter is, you know, a lot of people who were left behind, who didn't leave, would have felt left behind by a lot of people leaving Ireland. You would have had a lot of small villages or small towns being decimated by the amount of people leaving. That will definitely have an effect in an existential way in anxiety and depression and the feeling of maybe hopelessness because there's not many resources or even people around. Like the entire life of communities being kind of diminished and depleted. Now, also as well, again, Blind Boy, a frequent reference point in this podcast, but he was making the point that now that the recession is over, and I've been a frequent critic of this in Spain as well, because like the crisis is officially over in Spain, but you just don't see it affecting the lives of ordinary people. So even though officially or technically or whatever the definition they're applying to it being over, that very well may be true, but in practical terms for a lot of ordinary people, such as the bankers and the English teachers, it's not very evident. And it's the same in Ireland, because the great problem in Ireland now, there are two very interconnected problems. That one is homelessness. So there's like 10,000 people homeless now in the country, which is a huge crisis. And also as well, you have extortionate rent, where people can't afford to live or move out of their homes. So you have a lot of people having to live in their family homes or having to leave places like Dublin where the rent is ridiculous and crazy. So now, even though the recession is over for people like us, can we go home? Well, that depends. If do you want to live at home with your parents while you kind of find yourself on your feet, or do you want to share with people into your 30s, which, you know, I guess is okay as well, but you know, traditionally you wouldn't see it as a step forward, for example. Or are you going to go live in Dublin, but then all of your money's gone on either transportation, which isn't as good as it is in Madrid or other countries, or primarily also it's going on crazy rent. So a lot of people don't have lives because they're either always working and always traveling, and the money that they're earning is going just on their house. So what are the options for a lot of people? So even though I think a lot of people say, oh, you go to Spain, you know, you leave Ireland, you go to Spain, you can just have the Canyas and the Fiesta and all that kind of stuff. But that's always rubbish anyway, because when you're living in a country for a long time, obviously you're paying rent and taxes, and you're living your normal life, and that is your normal life no matter where you are, with its ups and downs. But like, we are people who were forced out of the country by the economic recession, and for many of us we can't go home because it's too expensive. So when I was asking you what type of migrant did you feel, that's kind of what I was getting at as well, because you know, in one sense I think I am this kind of economic migrant. My generation are these people that have been forced out and can't come home, and then when they do come home, it's also very difficult for a lot of reasons. And I think, even though I don't think it's a well-established concept in Spain, I don't think it's discussed as much, but I think Spain does have an experience of this as well, especially recently. So I don't know. I mean, do you see other Spanish people like living this life as well, this experience?
Right, I think definitely. I mean, it's very, very similar to what you've been describing. I would say, well, myself, it was probably a bit of a different situation, but I was lucky enough to leave just before the crisis started. But yeah, many people like had to leave right after. So probably if I hadn't left then, I might have left later on. And yes, I mean, I don't know. It's like it's really sad, but it's just what's happening all the time.
Well, yeah, it is what's happening all the time. But for example, maybe you can flesh out more what's happening in Spain. But one of the problems in Ireland is that 3/4 of our elected representatives are landlords. So there's a direct vested interest there, where a lot of people who could change things don't want to change things. And now something interesting. Well, please continue. Yes.
No, I think, well, it's obviously not the same situation like with regards land, but it is the same situation, I think, with regards like circles of power. I think there was already this situation like for certain sectors, like for example for us, like in the humanities, it was never, particularly easy, but it was just made more difficult. And then also other sectors that traditionally maybe like didn't have as many problems, and they started having problems as well. But then, there are always, I think we mentioned it in other podcasts, there are people that just lived through the crisis and didn't even notice, either because they had the right connections, or they came from the right family, and so on. So I think it's more about like the how spread that situation was, which was very much. And then there's also the issue of in a lot of the time these indicators of like whether we're out of the crisis or not, apart from like economic factors that most people don't understand, they also focus on like number of employment and positions created, things like that. The problem in Spain is mainly to do with the fact that it's not about how many jobs you create. It's about the fact that if you create a job for like 15 days and then check the person out, then it hardly is a job. You know what I mean?
Or even like in the UK, you had the problem of 0-hour contracts. So
yeah. I mean, it's a similar thing, but the thing is like that's what I mean. It's like it happens everywhere, but it's about proportion. How many people are actually in that
I think
situation, which in Spain was very high.
Yeah, well, very often though, I think those job statistics of jobs created are very misleading and very false, because, as you said, they're either temporary positions or they stretch the definition of what a job is, and either the conditions are very, very poor, or the job itself is very short term. So basically, you feel fortunate that you wouldn't classify yourself as anything other than a mover of your own volition, that you went because you wanted to, not by market forces.
Well, yeah, I would say that. I mean, I think that you have to separate, like, just there are two like dimensions to it. Like, of course, it's always like hard, and it's always an experience, like I was saying before. But of course, the situation, I mean, and it doesn't mean it's not hard. You still have to find a job. You still have to like maintain, yourself, and like pay the bills and everything else. But of course, it's not the same when you've had to leave the country out of desperation. Let's say that I went before actually reaching that stage. I didn't even try. I just left before.
Okay. Well, the reason I kind of asked you this question as well because a few days ago, at the time of recording this podcast, of course, by the time you've listened to it, it'll be over a week ago, a building was occupied in Dublin by people. Well, the building has been vacant for 3 years, and it was part of a direct action group who wanted to highlight the case of homelessness in Ireland, and also the soaring costs as well that's involved in finding accommodation for people. And the Irish police came in with balaclavas, with also unidentified men who probably were connected to the property, also in balaclavas, and protesters were forcibly removed from the building. And these were peaceful protests as well. So now, nothing really has been written in the Irish media about it, but it's a very troubling development, because I think when you're doing that, when you're going down that road, you're going down the road of Putin's Russia or something, and it's a very shocking thing that should never happen in the country.
Very common in Spain as well.
It was very common in Spain as well. Yeah. It's a complete violation of the democratic right to protest. And one of the things that I like about Ireland is I think that since the foundation of the state, it's been a very peaceful state, and there's been smooth transfer over power, and we haven't been beset by problems, that you could see in other countries after a civil war and its own independence movement. But if you're going down that road of putting on balaclavas and forcibly strong arming peaceful protesters, it's a kind of violation. It's a very ugly aberration, I think, in what the state was founded on, what the state has been, and what the state should be as well. Now, as I said, in the Irish media, there hasn't really been much about it, I think, to be honest with you. But I've checked a few of the papers. They haven't really gone into it in great detail. But I have seen a story where Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach Prime Minister from the first part of the show as well, has announced that they're building around 50,000 new homes for people on government land with direct purchase orders. And basically that will mean that they will be able to buy the house for relatively cheap prices because they won't have to pay extra taxes on the land itself, for example. Now, this announcement, maybe it's coming off the back of this protest where directly they're not going to say, the police shouldn't have done that, but that this is their way of subtly reacting to the problem, or maybe it's just purely coincidental. This was always on the cards, and this came out the same week as this kind of controversy in Dublin, which also as well. So if that does happen, it does sound very positive. But also another thing that I've seen as well. Excuse me, damn water going down the wrong way again. So Una Mullally, who's also an Irish journalist, she wrote on Twitter that what the elites or the powerful people in Ireland and probably in other countries don't understand is that over the last 5 years, the young generation, people in their early 20s, have a lot of experience of protesting and articulating their political opinions, or even their just social opinions about things, maybe abortion and other related ideas. And for them, it's as normal. Being politically active and engaged is as normal for them as it is to go to a stadium, to see a match, to go to a concert, to go to a bar, which I think is probably true. They do seem very socially engaged, more so than our generation, and definitely more so than,
in Ireland in particular, you mean?
In Ireland in particular. I think it's true, though, if you look at America as well, when you see like school shootings, you've seen the kids of those schools being a bit more involved, I think, very much involved in the aftermath, in being public advocates and giving speeches and becoming targets of Republican gun nuts, really. But so I think like it is a global thing where the youth are more politically engaged. Now you do see things, for example, with Brexit, where Brexit was lost because the youth didn't come out and vote because they thought it was a sure thing. And it was the old people that carried the vote in favour of having the Brexit. But I think by and large, young people are more politically engaged. And in Ireland, I think that is very true as well. So that's something that maybe there's a dissonance between that reality and then the people in power not fully appreciating that fact. But again, could go back to you in Spain, or maybe other examples that you can think of. Are you following? Do you think that is happening with you young people in Spain or in maybe in other countries?
I don't know. As you were saying it, I was thinking I don't think it's the case here. I don't know. I mean, when I was at university, it is true that there was always demonstrations. There was always, but I don't know. I think like there's a lot of like detachment perhaps, and it's hard to tell because I fear that now, because I'm not so much in touch with like people in their early 20s, that perhaps like I'm having like the point of view of a person in their 30s. It's more.
I know. I get.
My impression is that they have a different. I don't know. Like they care about different things, I suppose. I mean, I think education is definitely one that is still like going strong. And I think young people do care about that, and obviously like education and jobs. I think that's definitely an important thing. In terms of social things, probably nowadays focusing more on women, for example. But in terms of I don't know, for example, as you were saying, like evictions or. I'm not so sure. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. Again, I'm living here, so I don't know what's fully happening in Dublin and in Ireland, but there does seem to be a lot of movements springing out for kind of homeless issues. But I would say, there are certain issues that do grab the attention more, and feminism, I think, probably would be something that would have more of a cachet with people, or would have more of involvement from people, maybe. I think as well, possibly it's an issue of social media as well, because when we were in our 20s, we didn't really have those mechanisms for, a little bit we did, 'cause I remember hashtag Coney was kind of a thing that was trending on Twitter or Facebook or something. Oh
my God.
So that was probably the beginning of it, but I think it's something that's very fully established now, these kind of campaigns and these ideas of getting people moving through hashtags or through social media action as well. So that's probably like a deciding factor as well. Again, in the fullness of time, we'll see if this is carried out, if the politicians of tomorrow are going to be like that as well. Because I can imagine that, because the people that are in power in Ireland today, not just politicians, but TV presenters and people on radio, were also active in their student days in university. I know of a few particular cases, and we'll see if that translates into a different type of politician or just more of the same as well. So I don't know, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about. And when it comes to homelessness in Spain as well, that's also a huge problem. You think that maybe it's not an issue that moves a lot of people, but what do you think is the kind of, can you kind of paint a picture for the listener who wouldn't be familiar with the situation? What is happening? Is there any possibility for some kind of change or action on the issue?
Well, I think locally probably some things have changed in depending what places, because like some local governments have been more lenient, or more human in like sorting that issue out. What happens overall in Spain is that with regards housing, basically the law is very protective of the banks. For example, so if a person doesn't have enough money to pay for their mortgage, then it's not like in other countries where they can basically give their house as mortgage, right? But here, what happens is that they still like owe the money. They take the house, like the homeless, and they still owe the money. So, and also like they can just completely leave them in the street.
Well, you see very sad things every once in a while of like one man outside a bank and a sign saying that the bank took my house, and there's a feeling of powerlessness there, because that is maybe seemingly as much as they can do, and one man again, protesting outside a bank is not going to do much. But then again, he has every right to do that as well. I was wondering as well if there are some stories that do reach the media that do grab the public attention, because in Ireland recently as well, a woman had to sleep in a police station with her 2 kids because she had no place to go. And again, that was something that was a topic of discussion in the country, because a lot of people were appalled by that as well. Like in your experience, do you think these kind of human interest stories, to use a very poor choice of category for that, but those kind of human stories regarding homelessness and evictions, do they make much of a splash or an impression in the Spanish media?
I think they did a couple of years ago. There was like a wave of it where it was really talked about in the news. But now it's like it's gone quite quiet, and I'm sure it's still happening just as much. But it's kind of like not attracting as much attention. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps it's because like we have so many issues of corruption and like that sort of like big scandals, that the focus is not so much on that. Perhaps they have like gone down, but I don't think so, because the issue is still the same. Like it's still really hard to get a mortgage, and the banks still have like so much power, and there are still like so many empty houses that are owned by the banks and are not released, for example. And
well, that's a problem in Ireland as well. So it's a very troubling subject, and it's something that we probably should revisit in other podcasts, because something I want to get to grips with more and understand in more detail, because it is the great crisis of our time. One of the great crises of our time, particularly in Ireland. And I think we all, I won't say something very trite like we all want a solution to it, but we do, obviously. And it's just it seems like such an obvious thing. Like, why can't we provide accommodation for everybody in the country? It's just one of those things that seems like a basic service that should be provided, and for some reason or another, it's not. And a lot of people are going to suffer, especially coming into the winter as well. The reality is it's going to be very difficult for people who are forced into those situations. So I think that's all I can say about this topic. Unless you want to add anything.
No, I mean, and I think it's important to keep talking about it, because everything works in waves with news, and then suddenly people become very aware of it. There's a lot of debate. Everybody talks about it, and it just gets forgotten, and then the problem is still there.
That's very true. So, all right then. Well, we'll leave it there, and we'll be talking to you in part 3. can't believe you think I'm a B2. Anyway, part 3 of the show. Oy, okay, so I hope you enjoyed part 1 and part 2, and you can look forward to our video, as it will be released sometime
in the future.
No, actually, by the time you listen to this, because this is usually releasing on a Thursday, the video will already be up actually. So I'm pretty confident I'll have that edited. And yeah, so by the time you listen to this, you can actually already check out the video on our YouTube, and also the video version of the interview that we did with Mary in the first part where we asked Irish questions. We actually did that already for a short segment video, which you can also check out. Well, sure, why not?
You can compare answers.
So this is part of the podcast where we have to plug a few things. So Mary, please do the honors for Radio Public.
Radio Public. Okay. Yes. So you can listen on many platforms.
Okay.
Oh, you were getting up. But the best one for us is Radio Public, because every time you listen, you help us keep on doing what we like doing.
Wow, that sounded sincere.
Yes, well, I like that sentence, so I'll just keep repeating that.
It is true. So it's
true. Yeah.
It is very true, and also as well, we have been advertising our street tour and our app on various websites. We have a banner ad which should be up by now as well, on a website called Conversation Exchange. So if you are somebody who uses that anyway for practice languages, I think it's available all over the world. You might see it if you're based in Spain or Madrid. And also, you've been working on a newspaper for us to collaborate with. What are they called?
It's called Math for You, and yeah, it's just like a free magazine that is distributed across hostels and public places. It's for just to share everything to do with culture and just activities in Madrid.
That's very true. I think it could be related to the website Mad for Madrid. Are they linked to that?
It doesn't actually say that they're linked to anybody.
Okay, because I have actually published on their site. I did an interview with a band called Foresteros. You can see their 2 videos on our YouTube channel as well.
That's very true.
And also I've published something about the French Film Festival in Cork on their Hallowed page as well. So I don't know if they actually are connected, but the magazine is very exciting, and we'll definitely be plugging the app on the Android store and the street tour via those publications as well. So you can also find us on our social media, on our website, elanapramedia.com. So I'm so happy I've gotten out of the habit of saying elanapramedia.net, which is the old URL. So do not go to that one. Go to elanapramedia.com. You are also, you're preparing for a wedding. How are the preparations?
My cousin is having more publicity for this wedding
than a celebrity like Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
And Penelope Cruz.
That I'm not sure they ever got married, but even more so.
Have you noticed every movie they make, they're actually in it together now?
I know.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
Yes.
Anyway, so we can argue about that after the podcast as well. That'll be argument number 2. So, I guess that is probably pretty much it then. So, have a lovely weekend, a lovely week, and we'll be talking to you again next week in the next installment of the world famous, Madrid famous El Apra podcast. So thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The El Apra podcast, the home for cultural chit-chat in and outside Madrid. People will talk.